This is Korea News for June 9, 2022. On the 8th, the Vaccine Human Rights Action, which had been opposed to the Corona-19 vaccination and quarantine pass, filed a complaint with the prosecution against Jang Eun-kyung, former head of the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, on charges of abuse of power. The four people they sued are former Commissioner Jang, Jae-yong Ran-paik, Director of the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Kang Lip-kim, former Minister of Food and Drug Safety, and Young Rae-sun, head of the Social Strategy Team at the Central Accident Management Headquarters. Sun Hye-jun, a professor of medicine at Chungbuk National University, who is the representative of Vaccine Human Rights Action, held a press conference in front of the Cheongju District Prosecutor's Office on the same day and argued that the defendants made a quarantine pass that forced them to vaccinate with an excessive quarantine policy that infringed on the basic rights of the people. He said, relying only on the claims of vaccine manufacturers and the United States, without self-investigation and judgment on side effects, he abandoned his duty to protect the lives of the people and abused his health administrative power, he said. He also committed a breach of trust that had a significant influence on the. He continued, the accused excessively conducted business restrictions and quarantine passes without scientific principles, rational grounds, or follow-up measures under the pretext of the Corona-19 situation, he said. Prosecution, he urged. The Vaccine Human Rights Action protested against COVID-19 at a mart in Cheongju, arguing that the vaccine and quarantine pass are useless, and when facilities close to daily life, such as department stores and large marts, were included in the government's quarantine pass. Vaccine Human Rights Action is an organization that fights against human rights violations related to vaccination. 7 people involved in Vaccine Human Rights Action submitted a complaint to the Cheongju District Prosecutor's Office after the press conference on the same day. The South Korean government has decided to actively consider the possibility of providing arms support to Ukraine. It is expected to decide whether or not to provide support within this month after reviewing expert reports that contain the expected effects of the weapons aid next week, and hearing opinions from the government, party, and academics. It is highly likely that President Yoon Suk-yeol will attend the NATO summit to be held in Madrid, Spain on the 29th and 30th, and as the South Korean government has decided to actively participate in the post-war reconstruction of Ukraine in the future, there is an opinion inside the government that a decision to support arms is inevitable before that. It is known to come from the first trial of U.S. Iman, former chairman of the Roh Moo-hyung Foundation, who was handed over to trial on charges of defaming Justice Minister Han Dong-hoon, will be delivered on the 9th. The Seoul Western District Court held the sentencing hearing of former chairman U.S. Iman, who was charged with defamation, this afternoon. In December 2019 and July of the following year, former chairman Yu was tried on YouTube and radio allegations that the Anti-Corruption and Violence Department of the Supreme Prosecutor's Office, under the direction of the then Minister Han, looked into his bank account with the Roh Moo-hyun Foundation. Has been handed over to. The prosecution requested the court to sentence the former chairman of the Roh Moo-hyun Foundation to 1 year in prison, stating that former chairman U.S. Iman made false statements without any basis at the decision hearing held in April, which greatly affected the independence, fairness, and trust of the prosecution's investigation. Users want to choose only interesting content on one platform. However, operators who cannot create only great content every time want to have a minimum safety device. OT's monthly subscription model is a kind of safety fence. However, recently, a site that disables this has appeared, causing a wave in the industry. According to the industry on the 8th, PaySense, an account brokerage service, is selling monthly subscription services of 6 OTs, including Netflix, Wave, Tbing, Watcha, Disney+, and Raftel, on a daily basis. The price is 601 for Netflix Premium, 501 for Wave, Tbing, Watcha, and Raftel Premium, and 401 for Disney Plus Premium. When purchasing a pass, an ID and password are issued to use for 24 hours until the next day. Fears are growing that the world economy will experience stagflation for the first time in 50 years since the 1970s. Stagflation is a phenomenon in which prices continue to rise during a recession. The period of stagflation in the 1970s, when the oil shock occurred due to oil supply restrictions and price increases in oil-producing countries in the Middle East, is considered a typical period of stagflation. The World Bank, WB, released its World Economic Outlook on the 7th and drastically lowered its global economic growth forecast for this year to 2.9% from 4.1% in January. The World Bank predicted that the global economy will grow only 3% in next year and 2024, respectively, and low growth will continue for the next 10 years due to weakening global investment. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, also released its economic outlook on the 8th and predicted the global growth rate this year at 3%. The OECD lowered Korea's economic growth forecast for this year to 2.7% from the previous 3% and raised its inflation forecast to 4.8% from 2.1%. According to the Bank of Korea on the 8th, the Korean economy grew only 0.6% in the first quarter of this year. This was lower than the growth rate of 0.7% announced in April. The cement industry, where the government and industry worked hard by even checking the production status on a weekly basis during the supply crisis. The strike of the Cargo Solidarity led to a reef of transportation disruption. As the Cargo Solidarity of the Confederation of Trade Unions went on a general strike, land logistics stopped. Cement is a heavy item with no transportation alternatives. In Korea, 30% by rail, 30% by sea, and 40% by land depending on the transportation method in Korea. The bulk cement trailer, BCT, is the only means by which heavy cement is supplied to end users. Railroad wagons and ships cannot reach the end user. That is why shipment factories, which are cement distribution bases, are located at each port and railway station. Cement has been in short supply due to the urea water crisis last year, soaring bituminous coal prices this year, and tightened environmental regulations. In response, the industry has been working to increase supply by diverting exports to domestic demand and early operation of production facilities that were under inspection. The government worked so hard to extinguish the cement crisis that it checked the production status every week. However, due to unexpected transportation disruptions, the cement crisis is about to unfold in a new way. Physical clashes are on the rise as the general strike of the Cargo Coalition, of the National Confederation of Democratic Trade Unions is on the second day. According to the police on the 8th, at 8:30 a.m. on the same day, 15 members of the cargo union were arrested at the Haechinroikan factory as current offenders. It is reported that one of the 70 cargo union members who interfered with work, such as blocking the front of the factory despite police restraints, was arrested at the scene. On the 2nd, a union member was arrested by the police at the Haechinroikan plant. At that time, one union member was arrested on charges of assaulting a police officer, such as grabbing the collar of a working policeman and knocking him down. About 130 freight owners from Suyang Logistics, a freight forwarding agency for Haechinroikan and Cheongju plants, have been on strike since March after joining the Cargo Solidarity. In Busan, 2 union members were arrested on the same day by the police for throwing water bottles and eggs while blocking 2 trailers passing the propaganda site at the Newport 3-way intersection in Busan. In Gwangju, a union member was caught while obstructing the entry and exit of a non-member truck at the Hanam Industrial Complex cargo depot adjacent to the Gwangju branch office of the Cargo Solidarity. It was reported that the non-union member did not participate in the general strike. Clashes broke out on the first day of the strike. The day before, 4 union members were arrested and questioned on charges of assault, such as pushing a police officer while blocking the passage of a truck at a petrochemical complex in Namgu, Ulsan. On the 8th, the second day of the general strike, the Cargo Solidarity of the Confederation of Trade Unions issued a directive to completely suspend the supply and operation of vehicles related to auto parts, raising concerns about a production disruption at Hyundai Motors Ulsan plant. According to industry sources on the 8th, the Ulsan regional headquarters of the Cargo Solidarity issued a general strike directive to suspend the delivery and operation of automobile parts-related vehicles from 2 p.m. on the same day. Accordingly, vehicles belonging to the Cargo Solidarity that supplies parts to Hyundai Motors Ulsan plant will be refused transportation from 2 p.m. Hyundai Motor is concerned that if transportation is refused, production at the Ulsan plant will be disrupted. Since many of the drivers belonging to the transportation company that signed a contract with Hyundai Glovis, a logistics company of Hyundai Motor Company, are known to be members of the Cargo Solidarity, a strike is likely to cause serious logistics difficulties. Hyundai Motors Ulsan plant uses an average of 11,000 delivery vehicles per day. If the factories of automakers stop due to logistics difficulties, the production lines of many parts makers will inevitably stop as well. At Hyundai Motors Ulsan plant, except for Plant 1, which is undergoing facility construction, all plants 2 to 5 were planning overtime this weekend, but production is expected to become difficult if parts supply is disrupted right away. The police are planning to deploy their careers around Hyundai Motors Ulsan plant in order to respond to illegal actions by the union that may occur during the strike. Seungri, a former member of Big Bang, who was sentenced to 1 year and 6 months in prison on charges of arranging prostitution and gambling abroad, will be transferred to a private prison along with discharge. According to the personnel command of the Army headquarters on the 8th, Seungri will be discharged from the military on the 9th in accordance with the Enforcement Decree of the Military Service Act. He will be incarcerated until February 2023. Heart with arrow. Thank you for watching today. Please subscribe and like and set an alarm.